we've seen a trend of, and I'm going to go back to what we've seen with the gun violence, and it is quite shocking of what we've saw happen in Texas elementary school, where 19 children were killed and 2 adults by an 18-year-old who came into the school, and that's after he shot his own grandmother that he was living with. And that came just a week after what we saw in Buffalo supermarket, where another 18-year-old went in and killed 10 people. It's just for their skin color, and he had been identified as a white supremacist. But what it shows is you had 2 18-year-olds who took the lives of many innocent people. And now actor Matthew McConaughey, he was in the White House and he gave a very passionate speech on gun reform. And this is something now that celebrities are stepping up, and this is President Biden is trying to bring the House together and to be able to vote on this and reform. Take a look at the actor's speech in the White House.
Lives matter. My wife and I, Camilla, we spent most of last week on the ground with the families in Uvalde, Texas. We shared stories, tears, and memories. The common thread, independent of the anger and the confusion and the sadness, it was the same. How can these families continue to honor these deaths by keeping the dreams of these children and teachers alive? Again, how can the loss of these lives matter? So while we honor and acknowledge the victims, we need to recognize that this time, it seems that something is different. There is a sense that perhaps there's a viable path forward. Responsible parties in this debate seem to at least be committed to sitting down and having a real conversation about a new and improved path forward. A path that can bring us closer together and make us safer as a country. A path that can actually get something done this time. Camilla and I came here to share my stories from my hometown of Uvalde. We came here to take meetings with elected officials on both sides of the aisle. We came here to speak to them, to speak with them, and to urge them to speak with each other. To remind and inspire them that the American people will continue to drive forward the mission of keeping our children safe, because it's more than our right to do so, it's our responsibility to do so. I'm here today in the hopes of applying what energy, reason, and passion that I have into trying to turn this moment into a reality. Because as I said, this moment is different. We are in a window of opportunity right now that we have not been in before. A window where it seems like real change can happen. Uvalde, Texas is where I was born. It's where my mom taught kindergarten less than a mile from Robb Elementary. Uvalde is where I learned to master a Daisy BB gun. That took 2 years before I graduated to a .410 shotgun. Uvalde is where I was taught to revere the power and the capability of the tool that we call a gun. Uvalde is where I learned responsible gun ownership. Now, Uvalde called me on May 24th when I learned the news of this devastating tragedy. I had been out of cellular range, working in the studio all day when I emerged, and messages about a mass shooting in the town I was born in began flooding my inbox. In a bit of shock, I drove home, hugged my children a bit tighter and longer than the night before, and then the reality of what had happened that day in the town I was born in set in. So the next morning, Camilla, myself, and the kids, we loaded up the truck and we drove to Uvalde. When we arrived a few hours later, I got to tell you, even from the inside of our vehicle, you could feel the shock in the town. You could feel the pain, the denial, the disillusion, anger, blame, sadness, loss of lives, dreams halted. We saw ministries, we saw first responders, counselors, cooks, families trying to grieve without it being on the front page news. We met with the local funeral director and countless morticians who hadn't slept since the massacre the day before, because they've been working 24/7 trying to handle so many bodies at once, so many little innocent bodies who had their entire lives still yet to live. And that is there that we met two of the grieving parents, Ryan and Jessica Ramirez. Their 10-year-old daughter, Alethea. She was one of the 19 children that were killed the day before. Now, Alethea, her dream was to go to art school in Paris and one day share her art with the world. Ryan and Jessica were eager to share Alethea's art with us and said if we could share it, that somehow, maybe that would make Alethea smile in heaven. They told us that showing someone else Alethea's art would in some way keep her alive. Now, this particular drawing is a self-portrait, all right, of Alethea drawing with her friend in heaven looking down on her, drawing the very same picture. Her mother said of this drawing, she said, you know, we never really talked to her about heaven before, but somehow she knew. Alethea was 10 years old. Her father, Ryan, this man was steady. He was uncommonly together and calm. When a frazzled friend of his came up and said, how are you so calm? I'd be going crazy. Ryan told him, he said, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You'd be strong.
That's actor Matthew McConaughey at the White House, remembering the innocent children that lost their lives in that horrific shooting at the school where 19 children were killed and 2 adults. And it's devastating to see that and what the parents are going through. There is an investigation with the police and the police response. It has been escalated to the FBI in terms of the police not going into the school quick enough and also holding back parents and in some cases even arresting some of them who wanted to go into the school when they were hearing the gunshots at the Uvalde school.